Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today I just want to talk a little bit about the Game of Thrones finale because that basically just happened. So definitely want to give a spoiler warning to anybody who has not yet seen it because we are going to be talking about the Game of Thrones finale. And I'm actually doing this as a live video as well because, let's see, because I think it's got relevance now. And I normally talk Star Wars, but Dan and Dave are doing a new Star Wars trilogy, and I figure, you know what? It's probably a good time to talk Game of Thrones, just because I feel like the way that this all wrapped up is definitely relevant to. To there we go. There we go. But yeah, so I feel like it's all relevant to how how the next movies are going to be, because initial reactions by a lot of people are pretty bad. I mean, I've seen good and bad. I've seen the whole spectrum of initial reactions. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the finale itself. So ultimately, I'm kind of in the middle. Like, first impressions, just kind of in the middle. I think it did a lot of good things. I think it did a lot of meh things. And I think a lot of people were expecting a huge finale. Well, first off, I want to talk about the first thing. Again, spoilers, but I think the first thing is every other season has ended in the same fashion, where like the episode right before the end was the really huge hyped up episode, and then the final episode was not that great. I see some of you in comments are jumping in right now, again, because this is a live stream also, so some people are going to join in later. A lot of people are saying that it did feel rushed. I totally agree with that, and the funny thing to me about the rush factor of it is, while it felt rushed, the final episode had a lot of really slow moments that felt like it drug out way too long. And I'm like, boy, time management might have been a thing here. Now, I do want to preface all of this with, I thought it was a decent finale. And just kind of mediocre, like 5 out of 10. But here's the thing. Most series finales fall way short of the mark. This one hit the mark like right in the average spot, which I think if you compare to a lot of other major series finales, they'd fall way below. Like Seinfeld, like it was really a kind of a lackluster finale. The Sopranos, like one of the worst finales ever. We're not always going to get like a Star Trek: The Next Generation quality series finale. By the way, greatest series finale of all time, perhaps. But so here's the thing. There's good questions, and we're going to talk about, and I appreciate your questions, because we're going to talk about all of these. Whoop, all right. Focus was going a little crazy for a minute. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that it did. I think that it did well. Let's talk about what it did well. It did kind of tie up pretty much all the loose ends, and I think the best thing that it did, and this is why I'm jumping to this first, because I know they're doing spin-offs. I think the best thing that they did is they left a future for this show. I feel like that's an important thing, is they left a future out there, and that's awesome. Wow, what is going on with my focus? Let's see, did that fix it? No. There we go. Am I gonna have to manually? All right, there we go. We got it fixed. So no, they put a future on the show. You've got Arya doing the whole pirate thing, going north, or going west rather. You've got Sansa. Sansa doesn't really have a whole. I mean, Sansa didn't set up for a future. Sansa was more of an end, where Arya's was more of a beginning, and I like that. Jon Snow is a big question, because one of you are saying, what exactly is the point of the Night's Watch? What are they protecting? That's a great question. I feel like my first reaction was, when I watched that, I was looking at it thinking, well, wait, they're all leaving their post. First off, I don't know how they got the wall rebuilt so fast, like in like 2 weeks. They rebuilt the freaking wall in 2 weeks. Didn't that take centuries to build? Or is it maybe that all they did was shine the camera on that part of the wall that wasn't destroyed? That's a possibility. But honestly, it looked pretty much like they had completely rebuilt the wall. And I'm like, if they could just build it that fast, why not just build two of them in case the one ever fell? So, you know, I'm not sure. That whole thing. I think there's a good point in the comments where we're saying that the master coined the hand, and that like the council meeting and the squabbling they had, that was a very well done scene. There were a lot of well done scenes. There was something I like, Drogon melting the Iron Throne. Like nobody will sit on the Iron Throne, and if she can't have it, it dies with her. And like I thought that was very artistic. A lot of things. Poor Dany. Yeah, poor Dany after she just killed like 100,000 children. Poor Dany. I feel like the whole thing. I think the whole story would have been better if they had waited and stayed on book, because if you had her character progression be a little slower, then everything that she was doing would have made more sense. Like they still made her out to sound like she thought she was good, and I get that she thought she was good, but she was killing children. Like there's no reason to kill babies, mothers and babies. That was crazy. So the wall was broken at Eastwatch, and they left Castle Black in this one. Okay, so here's my ignorance as to Game of Thrones geography. I mean, the wall is, I know it's more than just more than just a few hundred feet. So you're basically they were at a different spot, so they just weren't shining on the broken part. So assuming the broken part is still pretty much broken. And that makes sense. Castle Black was not destroyed. That's why he sent Tormund Giantsbane and all of them back there. So that's a good thing. But yes, so we have we got a lot of interesting things to talk about. You don't come up. Hold on. Excuse me. Pardon me. 1 minute. What are you doing, buddy? You need to go to bed, okay? All right. Go to bed.
See you.
Good night. Got kids getting out of bed. That's what happens when you got kids. They wake up in the middle of the night, sleepwalking. All right. But yes, so I feel like leaving the future open was a really good thing. And let's talk about what I thought Jon was doing. So I thought Jon was abandoning his post, and I thought like all the wildlings are just going back north to like where they were set up before the walkers came, because they probably got camps and homes out there that they wanted to return to. And I thought Jon was going with them. But then, that was my first thought. The second thought is, I don't think he's actually going with them, because if you look, he's still in his Castle Black uniform. He didn't have like all the supplies and stuff. Like he wasn't going to set. He didn't have tents and stuff. So he was kind of just. I think he was going on patrol. I think he was escorting the wildlings back to their home. That's what I think he was doing. I think he was escorting them back, and it does seem like he'll still be a friend to them, just kind of doing the Night's Watch thing. So I think he's gonna. I think the idea is he escorts them all back, and then comes back to the Castle Black afterwards. So that's kind of how I expect that to go. Bran being king. Well, I like the fact that they kind of ended up with a sort of a semi-democracy there. So that was pretty cool. It's like a step. Sam was like, well, why don't we let all the people decide? And then they laughed. I thought that was hilarious. Even Sansa laughed a little bit, like, oh, why don't I give my horse a vote too? I'll ask my horse what he thinks. I thought it was hilarious. But yeah, it was a lot of really good things. Like there was a time jump, but it was not the time jump I thought. So we did see a small time jump, but it was only like a two week. What was it? About 2 weeks they were. 2 or 3 weeks that they were in, that they jumped forward in time after Jon and Dany. So let's talk about Jon and Dany. It was interesting. I expected, honestly, I expected something different. I expected Jon had to have like this fight with Dany. I thought Dany was going to try and roast Tyrion and Jon, and I thought it was going to turn out that Tyrion was actually a Targaryen the whole time, and he ends up not being burnt. We never really get to see if Jon would not be burned by dragonfire, and I thought for sure we were going to see that, and there was going to be some epic scene there. So that much is kind of a surprise. like, why didn't Drogon bite him or eat him? Like, that's something I don't understand. Maybe it'll be explained more in the book. Maybe there was an understanding. Maybe Drogon, like, are they trying to say, like, Drogon knew? Like, Drogon was like, Jon, you killed her, but I know what you did was right. And even though I'm disappointed with the loss of my mother, I still feel like I probably should kill you, but I won't, because deep down in my dragon brain, I know that you did the right thing. But I cannot, as a dragon and child of Daenerys, live with this. So I will carry her off after I melt the Iron Throne. What was going on there? So yeah, I thought Arya was gonna come in with Jon's face the first time, but that would have meant that Jon was dead. So then I was thinking a little bit later that she was going to come in with like somebody else's face. Like there was just so many times when I saw somebody like, wait, when Jon stabbed Daenerys, I thought she was going to be like, and it was Arya, but no, Arya's like evolving, and so this is actually a surprising thing. And it all started, and this was one of the best things about the last episode, is that Arya talks with Sandor Clegane, and he's just like, he convinces her to change paths, and she's like, okay. He's like, she realizes this is death. If I keep going on this super assassin road, I'm gonna die. So she switches from assassin to pirate, which is still quite deadly, but not totally motivated with murder, but rather motivated through adventure and fortune and discovery and maybe a little murder, So Arya has the best story ahead of her, because it's an entire undiscovered country. The stakes will be really high because anything can still happen. So that much is really cool. Whoa! And we got a super chat from Peter Rankin. Thank you to Peter. Awesome, chiming in with the super chat there. All right, well. Can't wait to see what I think. I guess you can't hang out for very long, but I wish you could hang out and chat with us a little more. But it was a pretty decent. I'll say decent. I know a lot of people are expecting different stuff. I've already been on social media and seen the entire rainbow of emotions for this episode. I think by and large, most people are somewhere in the middle with a meh. And I think that means it was safe. And I feel like that's all right. Now, here's one thing that I had learned recently, is that the actors all shot multiple endings for their characters, so this way somebody couldn't just spoil the whole thing. There were scenes where there were versions where a lot of the characters who lived died, and vice versa, and so that much is interesting. And I wonder if a part of that, and here's the big speculation, I wonder if they were like, we need to see how the fan reaction is to the final episode, to the second to last episode, and then maybe adjust the final cut based on that. Because if they have like multiple episodes ready to release, let's have the really bad one, let's have the crazy ending, let's have the happy ending. Like if there was ever a reason to buy the DVD or the Blu-ray or the whatever, you buy the release once it comes out for special features. That's absolutely the reason, because I'm pretty sure there were multiple different endings, and I would love to see like the more risky endings. I have the feeling that they saw the fan backlash over this last season, everything from the Battle of Winterfell to the Battle of King's Landing, and everybody was so disappointed that I figured they said they needed to cut their losses and go with the safe ending, and I'm okay with that. Honestly, I'm okay with that. Now, I also want to talk about how this kind of ties into Star Wars too, so we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But I do think that it's going to be all right. So first off, a lot of people are telling me Dan and Dave didn't have a whole lot to do with the last couple of episodes, and I'm like, okay, well, if they didn't have a whole lot to do with the last couple of episodes, then why are you so worried that they're going to do bad with Star Wars, right? If the good stuff that they were involved in was all the stuff that you loved, then I don't think you have anything to worry about with the last episodes, or at least that they didn't have as much to do with the last episodes. The other thing I said was great was like all of the cinematography, the scenes, the way that they're shot are just absolutely gorgeous. Like there is so many. That's not the highlight of this past season. It has been past 3 seasons. I think they've been absolutely beautiful. Like Daenerys walking to the Iron Throne with the ash falling around her, and it was gorgeous. Jon and Daenerys, like he did love her, he really did, but he knew what he had to do. It was a tough choice for him, and I feel like everything with that will be so much better in book form, because when there's that much emotion going through somebody. I just started reading The Expanse, for the most recent book for The Expanse. I'm a little behind on my Expanse, so I know it's been out for a few months already, and I hadn't gotten to it yet. But I'm just like, oh, James Corey's such a great writer, and I'm like he's up there with like people like Jim Butcher, and I love the way the descriptive way they write, and I feel like that would be really good for Jon Snow, to see what was going through his head in making the decision that he made, or maybe he makes a different decision in the books. It's interesting. So we have another comment. One thing you will not forgive is the writers on Jaime's death. In the previous episode, it seemed extremely out of place. Yeah, I feel like, here's what I think about that. I kind of agree with you if you're only watching from a TV show perspective. I have a feeling that in the books, that was one of these fixed things, like things that they couldn't change. Like Jaime needed to die with Cersei, and they realized all of a sudden, oh, wait, we have Jaime on this whole arc to be with Brienne. How are we going to get him back to Cersei? We only have like half an episode to do it. And so that's what happened. And that's a shame. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just trying to say that I think that's what happened. And that is a shame if that is the way it went down. But I'll say this: the books are there's a lot of differences when the show. Like, there's an entirely different character in the books named Aegon Targaryen, the character that Jon Snow took his name, and he's got a whole different arc on him trying to get. He wants to get the Iron Throne too, so it's a whole different player, and it's very interesting. I have a feeling the books will end drastically different than the TV show did, if they ever finish the books. And that's the thing, I don't know if they're ever going to finish the books. The fact that book 5 still, book 6 still isn't even, Winds of Winter isn't even out yet, and then you have Song of Spring, which is supposed to come out after that, and if you haven't even finished one book, I'm guessing he probably hasn't even started on the last book yet. So that's really a very interesting part. So we have some other things to talk about. Talk about the North, right? And so a lot of interesting things with the future of Westeros, right? They said that they're going to vote, so like their system is changing, and I thought it was a good part from Tyrion. Their entire system is changing, so that'll be good going forward, right? It seems a little more likely you have a council vote on who the next king will be, so you won't have any single crazy son of a king again, so you don't have to worry about bloodlines anymore. Although you still have to worry about bloodlines because the house elders are still voting, so there's still going to be some of that politics, but it's going to be less. I just feel like that was done, that was done very, very well. But then at the same time, they're also making other adjustments in that they're no longer going to be 7 kingdoms again. They're going to be 6 kingdoms because Sansa's like, dude, the North isn't going to bow again. And I think that makes more sense if you're more tied into the history and you realize just how long the North was independent for and what it took to unite them. I think that was Robert's Rebellion that had a lot to do with that. I'm not super up to speed on everything, but I think that was an important aspect. So with that being said, I think the future for Sansa in the North is pretty mediocre. I don't see a whole lot of interesting stuff happening there. So if for spin-offs, if you do a spin-off about the North, I feel like it would be boring. If you do a spin-off about King's Landing, I feel like that could be interesting. If you do a spin-off about Drogon, I feel like that could be interesting. If you do a spin-off about Jon Snow, that could be moderately interesting. I'm actually curious if there's anything else going on north. Like maybe they'll do something about them spiders that were in the book. There's all kinds of other stuff that's supposed to be north. But I think the most interesting part is going to be going west with Arya. Also, I want to ask you guys, if you guys are all watching, something else to think about, but while I get to other questions. I feel like they totally copped out on certain things. Like specifically, the god of light, the Lord of Light, and the Azor Ahai prophecy, the prince or princess who was promised with a flaming sword. Like, I feel like that never happened. I mean, it wasn't Beric Dondarrion. It was supposed to be Stannis Baratheon. She realized she was wrong there, and then she thought it was Jon Snow. Jon Snow never used the flaming sword. You know, Jon Snow never did any Azor Ahai stuff, and I feel like if they just be like, oh yeah, it was Jon Snow the whole time because he stabbed Daenerys. I'm like, no, that doesn't sound right at all. You know, and I don't see how you could say it was I don't see how you could say it was Arya either, because she's not a princess. She's definitely, like, she's not a lady. She's not a princess. She never had a flaming sword. You know, so like that. There was too much build up over Azor Ahai, and then it just kind of disappeared. Like, and that's something that kind of annoys me, because that was a major plot point for multiple seasons and just vanished. So I'm a little annoyed about that. Do you play a Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game? No, I do not. I've heard, I know a lot of people that do play it, though. I heard it's pretty good. It looked to me a lot like Rune Wars, and it went to Kickstarter around the same time that Rune Wars was coming out, so I didn't see the reason to play two different games that were almost identical. At least they looked almost identical to me, so I sided with Rune Wars, and then Legion came out and replaced that, and I didn't want to go and play Song of Ice and Fire. I feel like if I'm going to play a fantasy game, I want it to be more Dungeons and Dragons, as more monster based. I want to see more monsters in my tabletop game. So like if Fantasy Flight ever does that, or you know, if any, I also want a wide player base. Like I don't want a tabletop miniatures game that the only people who played it with me are people who backed it on Kickstarter. You know, so like I want there to be more people. Now, granted, Song of Ice and Fire is doing well, and it's actually becoming widely popular, so that's cool. I might check it out someday, but I don't see myself doing that anytime soon. Let's see. So I see some of you, I think it was an amazing episode, and then some of you didn't like it, which is really funny. You know, and I get it. I think a lot of it boils down to what your expectations were. I had pretty low expectations. I really didn't expect anything. I did expect it to be kind of a slower paced episode, but I expected more of like an exposition. Like there was a pretty good amount of exposition after the action was done, you know, and and I think that also, like, the episode, the climax kind of stops once Jon kills Daenerys and Drogon takes her body and flies away, and then you get, like, it fades to black and you get the time jump there. But yeah, I think that's like where they start the follow-up, like what happens after, and there was a lot of really good things there. You know, it's going to be interesting tomorrow. I don't know how many of you ran a death pool or dead pool. I ran a death pool at work, and I picked a lot of people to die, and a lot of people lived. Like, I think if I have any disappointment in me, it's that way too many people lived that shouldn't have. Like, how in the heck did Tyrion survive everything, and how did Arya survive everything? And I mean, even Sam, for crying out loud, Sam survived. And you know, like, and how many times in the Battle of Winterfell did Sam have zombies all over him and he still survived? That dude honestly should have at least caught polio from all of that stuff. I don't know what is going on there, but yeah. So we're in a world without Game of Thrones now. So that's the thing. Ultimately, though, I feel like they went with the safe ending. It was still shot beautifully. It was a satisfactory ending. And if that's what ends up happening with the next Star Wars movies, if they end up satisfying, you know, then I don't see that being as a terrible thing, especially if it's, you know, the problem is you have to keep your expectations low. I feel like this season was almost doomed no matter what, because of after 3 years of waiting, there was no way something was going to satisfy that. Certain things weren't done right. Like, if my biggest thing that I would change, if I could have changed it, is I still would have had Daenerys fly towards the Red Keep, but instead of her torching everybody along the way, she would have just flown for the Red Keep and torched that area. She would have still got civilians in her path, and it might have ignited the dragon fire and still triggered a chain reaction, which blew up major parts of the city. But she wouldn't have been deliberately targeting civilians. She would have, and like when they said, well, but your recklessness caused a lot of people to die. I'm like, well, they were loyal to Cersei. She could have still been like that, but not like deliberately going after them, but just like, oh, well, they died. It was, it was casualties of war. It's tough, That's what I would have changed. This way, it doesn't have her going like because she was like increasing on the value of crazy from 1 to 10. She started off at like a 1 or a 2, and then every like season or two, every season she'd go up by a half a point, and I feel like she was at like a 6, and I would have seen her jumping to a 7 or maybe even an 8, but they jumped her to an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10 in that episode. So like that's what I was just like, that's not cool. And then they kept it going because she said in this episode that she's going to liberate all the other places. I'm like, really? You're going to go to Winterfell and liberate Winterfell? It's already pledged their loyalty to you? Like that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You're gonna go and burn down all the places that are already loyal to you. Like you're just going to kill everyone. That's your plan, is to just murder the planet. That doesn't make sense to me. So, maybe the book could have done it better. I don't know. Like there had to have been a reason that she thought she needed to go to Winter. Like it was probably Sansa. Like in the book, if they do that plan in the book, it's going to be Sansa's the reason she wants to go to Winterfell. That's what I think. But that's what I've got. I thought it was a decent episode, but very middle of the road, very safe. And middle of the road is better than I expected, so that's why I'm saying it was all right, Oh, and yes, we did. Oh, good comment. Good comment from Derek Hall that we did get to see Ghost. We did get to see Ghost again, and I was glad to see that Jon Snow got sent north to the Wall. It was very appropriate. That was one of the theories that a lot of us had, is that Jon would have went north to be with Tormund Giantsbane again. That was cool. I liked that. Kind of sad him and Brienne never got together. But I'm glad they had the budget for a good boy Ghost because he was a very good boy. And I think there's another thing that we never really got to see, and this was a big thing from the books, and it would have been cool to see it. But I mean, they showed it a little bit in I think season 6 or was it season 7. But Nymeria, which is Arya's wolf, there's a whole lot going on in the books with Nymeria. She became a pack leader for a whole bunch of other wolves. She has this super pack going on, and she's raising this super pack, and it's mentioned a whole lot. And Nymeria is like, and Arya wargs into Nymeria, like when she's sleeping, she has like a mind meld with Nymeria. Now they did get her kind of, reuniting with Nymeria, kind of saying goodbye, like, oh, you're not my wolf anymore, you have your own thing, okay, cool. And then she left. But like, they should have used the super pack of wolves. Nymeria should have come and helped her out, and helped out Arya in battle at some point. Would have been cool if they showed up in the Battle of Winterfell. That would have been awesome. And I'm kind of disappointed that never, this another major story arc that never got fulfilled in the show. There's just a lot of that. There's a lot of stuff going on in Dorne that they never really got to. The books just, they could have made this show last many, many more seasons, getting to where it was going, if they had talked about Dorne more, if they had done the Azor Ahai stuff. I feel like there's so much more. And apparently there was also a theory going on around that there's a whole nother dragon. And I think this was from the books a little bit more too, but like at Dragonstone, that there was like more dragon eggs, or that there's a dormant dragon under, somewhere around there. And that's actually a really cool theory. And I was thinking that maybe it would have shown up. But like, to do something that big would have been pretty tough. I don't know, guys, but if you're watching this afterwards, this was a live video. I was taking a little bit of Q&A from the audience, and that's, if you're watching it after the fact, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Again, my expectations were very low, and it exceeded them, but only by a little bit. It kind of was, and that's only because it was safe, and I was afraid it was going to be like really, like they were gonna have people break character like too much more. I was afraid they were gonna be like turn Tyrion into a warrior, throwing axes at every, splitting heads like crazy, make Jon Snow into like a mass murderer, have Arya like marry Gendry and become a housewife. You know, like just more ridiculous stuff. I was prepared for anything, and the fact that they kind of hit it right in the middle, I was like, okay, that's not bad. A lot of shows have done worse, and that's my final thought. All right, guys, I want to thank you all so much for hanging out for the live stream, and let me know what you think of the Game of Thrones finale. We'll talk some more about it and more about Dan and Dave and the hopes for the next Star Wars trilogy, because I still have high hopes for it. I mean, I love Star Wars, so I love entertainment. It's a great time we live in. A lot of great entertainment is coming our way. All right, guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.